Hi, I'm Othar Faison of the Wild Thing, the Wolfpack. Today we're actually doing my part 2 video of mental health and heathenry and paganism. My good friend here, Heather, who's actually been a little expertise in this subject and wants to share her wisdom, and actually, a good friend of mine, and I figured no better person to talk about it would be Heather.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I figured it's, I think it's been a long time coming. Just the environment that we're kind of in right now and stuff, and, I think, I've been telling people, it's like I think this year is the year of like healing, in my personal opinion, and that's just kind of something that's been kind of drawing me. It's unfortunately for me as well because there's some anniversaries of mine coming up that are not too grand, but one of the things I got to deal with, unfortunately. But before we can continue on, if you'd like to introduce yourself, kind of tell us like what your experience is in the pagan heathen community, how long you've been practicing and stuff like that. Just kind of give like the audience of, who you are as a person.
So, hi, my name is Heather. I've been working with the Fairbanks Pagan and Heathens almost since its inception. When they first got started, I have a friend of mine contact me and asked me if I wanted to be an admin, and I was happy to accept the honor at the time. As far as how long I've been a pagan, after I got divorced the first time, I was a practicing Christian while I was with my first husband. And I definitely had a feeling towards the end of it, as I was going through a really, really nasty divorce, that there's no way a loving God would allow as much trauma and heartache as was involved with that divorce. And so that's when I started exploring the pagan side of the house.
Okay. So, with that being said, too, it's just, I think we all had that little check with reality of like, maybe Christianity ain't really quite for us, and that's kind of like the thing too. It's just Christianity for everyone. Now, if you're a Christian, that's fine. That's you do you, boo boo.
Absolutely.
But sometimes it just doesn't fit for everyone. Paganism doesn't fit for everyone either. So that's kind of thing too. So with that being said, though, since you're part of Fairbanks Pagans for quite some time, we're kind of talking about how you actually got in some of like the counseling work involved. If you wouldn't mind, giving some actual insight on that and how that kind of went.
So at first it was just occasionally talking with other pagans and sharing our stories, and then for a little while in the before times, we were before COVID and everything.
The before times.
The before times. I was helping to host a kind of group therapy session called Out of the Broom Closet, and that's where we got together, and we weren't enforcing anybody to come out in whatever their faith choices and spirituality choices were. But it was there as kind of a communal group to let people know that they weren't alone in their spiritual journey, let them see some other views. We did group meditation and talks and just tried to build that community feel.
Well, it's actually pretty interesting that you actually mentioned the whole not really forcing like the paganism or like the heathenry down people's throats like that, and just having a space, having a space for someone to actually just, seek help that they need to seek, or even just seeking community, and I think, even if it's like in, again, Christian circles, pagan, Islamic, whatever it may be, you can still see those kind of things, because there's still a sense of community regardless of what you practice, and again, that's just kind of my observation. I think, as we kind of see nowadays too, it's just, I think we're kind of over the infighting a little bit. A lot of people are kind of tired of like just the bashing each other, and we're kind of just, we're kind of in the healing mindset. That's just my observation, so what are, I guess it's kind of more off the script a little bit. So what would be some of the things that, what in your opinion might draw someone to be possibly, I guess in struggling in the mental health side of the fact, just some of the things like just trying to find a way to describe this, it's because again, it's kind of like off subject, but I guess a better way is, how can, someone you just observe that, is struggling with mental health, but they may not share the same faith as you, how, like, or even like if you don't share the same faith as someone who's actually holding a mental health support thing, how would we actually go forth about actually still seeking the help that we need, even though we may seem strangers? So,
well, like, honestly, stuff like AA is a good example of where spirituality is encouraged. They do often use the monotheistic God as their guide, but I also know several pagans that have been successful through AA as they work as more of a spiritual guide, or whatever they feel was what they connect with. There's more push towards a more secular a more secular like higher power idea. And even when I worked for the Fairbanks Native Association, I was a substance abuse counselor with them. And one thing we often encouraged was finding that connection with their spiritual side, because it does help towards healing of whether it's emotional trauma, whether it was physical trauma, whether it's substance abuse. Having that connection, that feel that we're not alone, which is a big thing. A lot of people feel very alone in life, and that's what tends to lead to those anxieties, the depression, the need to self-medicate with various different substances. And at least the program that I worked with, we pushed a lot the community portion of things, because if somebody feels that they're part of a community, feels ownership in that community, then they want to bring themselves better to make that community as a whole better. And then like going towards like the different options that are available. Probably the best thing I ever got told was actually from a Christian priest when I was a child. We were in youth group, and maybe he didn't quite mean it the way that I took it, because it was Episcopalian church. But one thing he told the congregation was, this may not be the path you need to be on. So find the path that does work for you. Now, we as a youth group went to various different churches and tried different churches, but I think the statement itself is valid. One person's path may not work for somebody else, and you've got to find a path that does.
You know, it's actually a pretty good point with that too, 'cause I've actually even talked to other pagans and heathens that actually had somewhat similar experiences with actually like Catholic priests or even like other priests as well, and they even as Wild Heathen Wolfpack, we actually have a lot of Christian supporters. They actually do support what we do, what we're about, and we all support them too, because I think Alaska has that uniqueness that actually like requires you to kind of like put your differences aside, because if not, you'll die.
Yeah, we're very much aimed at survival of the community.
Yeah, right. But that's that's kind of like the thing too, is like, and I feel like, and maybe I'm a little boasting here, I think Alaska's kind of leading the way on that one. But that's just, I don't know, my little horn to kind of
we're biased.
Yeah, maybe a little biased on that one. But I think, and I liked how you actually mentioned too the spirituality part of it, because I think, no matter what spirituality you kind of hold, is you need it. I think, now granted, I mean, if you're an atheist or whatever, that's kind of, I think that might be a little difficult for someone to kind of find, but maybe that's just because how I interpret it, maybe that's just...
There's still a way to find community, even though, even in that, that community may be actually your physical community or group that you work with. Maybe you're working with one of the LGBTQ alphabet mafia groups, or maybe you're volunteering with the city, stuff like that.
Yeah, alphabet mafia. I don't know, it made me chuckle a little bit, but anyways, but it's like, so, and that's kind of like the thing too, is like, and I think I noticed what a lot of people kind of come towards the pagan and heathen side of the house is, it's almost like, because in the heathen side of the house or the north side of the house, we emphasize community a lot. It's actually one of like the big like tenets, if you will. I know there's no like real written tenets, and people like, oh, the virtues and that. And I'm like, but for the most part, it's kind of cross board. Even like in the pagan, the Celtic side of the house, that's actually still a really big deal too. And if you even look at the Christianity side of the house, or even like Judaic or anything like that, that community is always still going to be there.
One of my favorite parts growing up in the Episcopal Church was that after Finn again.
Don't mind the dogs. They're being woofers.
They are. I'm sure they're protecting us from a leaf or something.
Yeah.
Finn. But after worship was fellowship hour, and we were drinking coffee and eating cookies and enjoying each other's company. And even with my path as a kitchen witch, the big part of it is feeding others, being there to provide for other people, and that's where I find my healing.
Yeah. So I think I guess it's kind of brings me to like the next point here. It's like, I guess this might be a two-part question, and I guess it's probably a question for myself too, as far as being a Gothi, is how do we actually, one, recognize people who are actually struggling and people who actually need some actual help in the community. Granted, me being military, and I try to be apolitical as possible, because being a military platform and stuff like that too. But we also got people with different backgrounds and various backgrounds and such, and I've been seeing a lot of military guys, guys and gals just struggle. They're whether they're far away from home, being in Alaska, or they just got a lot of stuff going on. And I think unfortunately, doesn't matter what you got a military, civilian, like the
Our suicide rate up here is
yeah.
dumb.
Well, even across the board.
Dumb is in really, really bad. But
Yeah. Well, and that's just across the board too. And I think us as spiritual leaders or community leaders, I think we have a obligation, in my opinion. Maybe it's me being military and just kind of talking about whatever's, but I think there's an obligation, whether you believe you're Christian, pagan, heathen, whatever. Like there's an obligation that you have towards your community to bring in these people. Now, I think it's just, and again, we've had victims of many things. Not trying to dig too much today because I don't want to cause any triggers or anything like that.
That's a whole other
that's
a whole other episode.
Yeah, whole other episode. But the thing too is, I guess the question is, how do we become the beacon for others to easily recognize us, but also how do people who are in that struggle bus seeking that group, how would they find it? I think that's kind of something we got to ask ourselves too. So yeah, I
know for me, I work very much in the public. I left being the substance abuse counselor, and now I work on Fort Wainwright as well.
Yeah.
And I work with soldiers daily coming into my facility, whether they're using the game side, coming to get something to eat. And a lot of it is getting to know them and also recognizing when I have new guys that come in. Sometimes I will see something obvious that like I can use as a conversation starter. I'll see them wearing a Molnir. Or the other day I saw somebody who had a pentacle ring just like I've got.
Yeah.
And this became a conversation starter, and I was able to be like, hey, so are you part of the Pagan and Heathens group? We've got this group, we've got that group. And I started telling them about the Wolfpack and all the various different activities that we have to help them feel connected. A lot of times I'll hear something along the lines of, oh, well, I'm a solo practitioner.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's fantastic, but welcome to Alaska. It gets very dark and very cold, and if you have any like seasonal affected depressive disorder hints, it becomes very difficult in the summer or in the wintertime. Sometimes in the summer, the 24-hour light thing can really mess with people's heads too.
Right.
But this kind of goes for everybody, but I really do focus it on the new soldiers. I'll be like, hey, let's find you activities to do. Find you people to get it. And other than just going to the bar and drinking every day. We have enough problems with that one as well. I mean, I like to go get my dance on as much as anybody. But in turn, like people need to be involved and feel like they have a community. And then just once I get to know the guys, I can also tell them, hey, what's going on? You seem a little down, or they might come up and just be acting a little quieter than normal, or they may just get a feel. If that makes sense.
No, I get
that there's just like an aura around them, or a feel that they're not quite doing very well. I've had one soldier that I have his personal number and he has mine, which I don't give out very often. But he'd come in and he's like one-word sentences, very short, very quiet, sits all by himself. So one day I was like, hey, are you doing all right? Let's talk. And I actually had him come into my office. I shut the door. I sat there and talked with him for a little while. He's not doing well. And this was like October. First duty station, away from family. Finn, go inside. Call Finn in, please. That didn't happen. But yeah, I took the time to not only get to know him, keep tabs on him. I brought him up for the holidays, which the holidays is always a really, really rough time. I also found guys in his unit and kind of clued in one of his superiors to be like, hey, this guy's not doing too hot.
Right.
Can you help me keep an eye on him?
Yeah. Well,
he made it through the winter.
Hey, that's good. One winter at a time. It's especially up here. You gotta have one winter at a time.
I'm gonna go put them in.
Oh yeah. Go ahead and actually stand this thing up, because this thing is getting a little hard to hold. All right. We probably edit some of this out. Maybe. Who cares? Who cares? Anyways. All right.
Okay. Life quirks.
That's what it is.
Life quirks.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, actually that's kind of how we met a little bit. I mean, a little different story. Just first day in Fairbanks. I go to Silver Gulch.
And I was at the bar.
Yeah, we were at the bar. And of course, I think I heard you say like something about the witchy touch. I'm like, like
Yep.
I did that. I was like, oh, you okay? And he's like, yeah, you know, go to this shop. And it was Wolf and Silver. And that's how I met my wife. Actually, it's
You're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. And that's kind of just how that goes sometimes. And I think, I think it's the real challenge too is actually looking for a group because solo practitioners, and I think there's so many solo practitioners either because they may not understand why people are in community, or they tried a community thing and they got burned, and I think that's probably more the latter, unfortunately. They tried a community thing and they just didn't really find a good community. So with that being said,
they might be reflecting it too for if they have any religious trauma.
Yeah.
Like whatever place they were at prior to, regardless of denomination or flavor, hurt them, and now that they're trying something that they feel is completely different, they also may not realize what all is up here.
Right. That's gonna be not just here either. That's everywhere thing. Oh, get the dog is running around.
Yeah.
But
can we take the dogs inside? Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I need them inside. Please. I literally just put them in. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got dogs too. I got to do the whole, like, hey, get over here. Like, because they'll be trying to run the slough and stuff, try to go in the neighbor's yard. I'm like,
the old one likes to bark off the back porch. I don't think he realizes what he's barking at. Right.
There's something different.
He's 13 and a half years old, so I think he's just barking to feel included.
I can see that. But, so I guess man, I think one of the things as we talk more and more about this kind of things, just trying to meet the groups and stuff, I think at this point, I think we got to probably talk about some of the wisdom we could probably share, like some of the people who are brand new to paganism, heathenry, whatever it may be. I'll say what kind of wisdom we can actually share as far as finding group goes. I mean, because finding groups, especially in the heathen side of the house, that can be kind of tricky, because if you kind of fall under a certain kind of way of life, some of these groups are not super welcoming. Unfortunately, that's kind of the reality of our thing.
We
Now,
do have gatekeepers on all sides.
Yeah, that's just kind of the gatekeepers are just terrible people all around. Now, but then I think it is not as bad as we think it is, in my personal opinion. I don't think it's as nearly as pushed upon or even just as relative as it used to be. I think back in the day it was, probably 10 years ago it probably was, but nowadays it's not. I don't think it's not real hard to find a group these days, especially with all of them being on the internet these days.
Yeah, the internet has done huge things for the growth of knowledge that the pagan groups are out there.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's got good and bad. Unfortunately, where I think that's another thing too is a lot of groups get a lot of flack for being online only. So, and I think that's just online as a tool. And I think that's how it should be viewed as a tool. It should be just a only means of meeting. Now, I guess some people, depending on where you're at, might be a little difficult to actually meet. But however, though, it's when you actually limit yourself to meeting other communities and stuff and other kindreds, or even covens and stuff, you actually limit your ability to actually feel connected, to feel actually a part of your community, but also your spirituality. He decided that the spirituality is really connected to the community. And I'm not sure on the Celtic side of the house how that really entails. I mean, imagine it's probably similar, but not probably too far off. But so I guess the next part is my question to you is will be, in your experience, be some helpful wisdom for someone actually looking for a group or just looking for something of who's going through some mental health that actually needs a group. So what could be some wisdom that you might possibly share with that?
So for starters, if you're having some mental health issues, please seek counseling. That said, your therapist can also help you find a group. They may have more resources. That's part of what they do, is to have a Rolodex, essentially, whether it's being able to type something into the computer, or they have a number, or they know a guy that knows a guy. They have, that's their job, is to have those resources and to help you find that if that's something that will help.
Right.
So I'm always going to be a huge supporter of, if you feel like you're having a mental health issue, or you feel like talking to somebody who's objective, please find a therapist. Then from there, internet searches, Facebook, again, be they can be just as harmful as good as well as good. So be selective.
Yeah.
Take your time to get to know a group, see what's in your area. There's no one thing I've actually enjoyed about being part of the Pagan and Heathens is, as well as the stuff that I've done with your group, is that there's no like you have to do X, Y, Z to be a part of us.
Right.
You know, you're here. We love you.
Yeah.
Let me feed you.
Eat the porridge. Eat the porridge.
Eat the porridge. Eat the porridge. Enjoy the meat if you can have meat. You know, that sort of thing.
Right.
And build those bonds and connections. Keeping your eyes out. Sometimes doing things as, and to some this might be silly, but going to things like the home shows or the various different whatever like street fairs and whatnot that are around. Because oftentimes you'll find a booth that has some not Christian or various different spiritual
metaphysically stuff.
Metaphysical paraphernalia. There we go. And the person there may have a couple ideas for who to turn to, or you know, a lot of it too is when you're comfortable, just talk to people and start feeling like you're able, or like start feeling like you're able to talk to other people. Yeah, the more you hide your spirituality, whether it's one fear or another, or you don't want people's reactions, or you already feel alone. Once you start talking about it, you'll find that you're not alone. There is a lot of people out there. Like I felt for the longest time living here in Fairbanks, which I have often referred to as the Bible Belt of the North. that I was one of very, very few. And it was when I started talking more about being a pagan that I started to realize there's a lot of us up here.
Oh, we coming strong up here. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would say like ratios for every Christian, it's almost a 1-to-1 in some cases. There's a lot. I
would say in some cases more, you know. But so I guess another thing too, and I'm going to probably draw from my personal experience on this. I remember one time when I was a young NCO, brand new book start, you know, just understanding, you know, troubles of soldiers and stuff like that too, right? And I remember I had a soldier, which I'm not going to disclose his name because privacy and stuff, but also this person's actually doing really great. Met a good girl and all that stuff, and you know, but he also had a lot of trauma in the past, you know, just not being loved by family and stuff like that too, right? But I remember he came to me one time and he was saying that he was like depressed, and I was like, okay, you know, I mean that's, you know, it's fortunate here, you know, and of course I remember one time it just clicked in my head one time. It's like, what do you like to do for fun? And he's like, well, I like to go camp and fish and hunt and go hiking and stuff. I was like, okay, when was the last time you did that? And he's like, it's been a minute. It's been a while. I was like, you know, and he actually went that weekend to go camping, and he's like, you know, it made me feel better. Now, granted, my issues are not solved. I'm like, well, I didn't expect it to, but it's like, but I think it was a good start. I was like, and it's something that just clicked to me that day. I was like, you know, you got to give yourself a fighting chance, you know, like, I mean, granted, that's easier said than done. You know, that is very much easier said than done. I think, you know, as far as in tying that to the spiritual side of things, right? Because again, I like to hunt, fish, and camp and all that good stuff too. But I've also noticed like trying to connect spiritually from going to the woods and being in the city, because, you know, being in the military, you travel to these different places. Sometimes your environment is actually what dictates your best chances of actually coming on top. You know, for example, like when I was in South Carolina, it was, you know, Columbia, you know, like the capital, and it's just all you hear is sirens and ambulances and a lot of noise, you know. And of course it's hard to connect with like your spirituality, but when I come here, I just walk in my back door and I'm in, you know, like good to go. But I also feel there's also more of a community here, right? Now I'm not trying to bash South Carolina or the cities, but I think what many are trying to say is your environment that you surround yourself with gives you the best odds of overcoming, you know, the challenges you may face. Like, you know, I like the meme that it says, like, before you diagnose yourself with depression, just make sure you're not surrounded by a bunch of assholes.
Yep.
You know,
and we do have that advantage here in Alaska where we're immediately out in nature. We can immediately connect. Yeah. It's a little hard to do a whole lot of grounding this time of year.
Yeah.
Because it's still frozen.
A little bit.
But
a wee bit.
as snow comes down. But that said, like being in the city in the Carolinas, that's really hard to ground too.
Yeah.
Because like the energies, and there's so much concrete, and it's hard to get that little bit of connection with some earth. Surrounding yourselves with those positive energies, wherever you can find that, is big.
So I think we kind of hit it on the head as far as this video goes. What do you think?
I think we're good.
Yep, I think so.
I enjoyed this conversation.
It was a great one, actually. This one's been a long time coming, in my opinion. Like, and again, I've talked to I talked to many people too. They say, I was saying, like, 2023 was a rough year for a lot of people, and that's why my long videos, someone comes like, yeah, it was. It's like,
I lost over 10 people last year, and a lot of them were my age or younger, and like coronary issues and whatnot. Some of them were expected, some of them were not, and everyone hurt. It's
so unfortunate to hear too. And the things though too is, and unfortunately I've lost a lot of people in my lifetime too, and one of them was a 10-year anniversary this year, so that's a challenge in itself right there too. And I think it's one of those things where it's not a one and done thing. This is definitely not a one and done. Like, it's constant work, it's a constant habit, it's the love you give yourself with the love you give others. That's actually what's going to win the day for you. And of course, everything is one day at a time too, especially since there's a lot of people out there who struggle. They've lost people, whether it was the before times or even the during times and the now times and things like that, and it varies for reasons too. And I think it's when we actually start, and I'm actually kind of guilty of this too. When I came back from my third tour, I was like, I've been deployed a few times. I'm good. I got this. And of course, I did not get that.
You have a whole new slew of traumas to deal with.
Well, the issue though too is my third one was like nothing really happened kind of deal. But of course, I had a bunch of other issues I haven't dealt with, and of course, they kind of reared its ugly head a little bit too. So, and that where that challenge kind of came to be is because I was like, I got this. No, you don't got this.
Well, and a lot of people think that if you process a trauma, it goes away, or like with grief, it eventually gets smaller. It's not that it gets smaller. You learn more things that help you handle those things from day to day to day. Whether it's because you lost somebody, like I want to say out of all the people I lost in the last year, 4 of them were all coronary issues, and they were all in their late 30s, early 40s. Right, I'm 44.
Yeah.
So I started having heart palpitations. So this prompted me to be like, you know what? I know I'm only 44, but I'm going to go get a heart monitor. I'm going to see what's going on.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the thing too, is we cannot neglect ourselves. And whether you work your 9 to 5 and you're kind of putting yourself out there, you got to pay the bills. I'm not trying to say like revolt against the man or anything like that, but the thing though too is you still got to take your time to actually take care of yourself, not just only for yourself, but for the ones around you, for people like you love, and like your spouse, your kids, your immediate community, things that you love. And you not only do they earn it, but you also earn it yourself. Like you yourself also deserve to actually be healthy and happy and be in your best self that you possibly can be.
I feel we're at a huge generational shift in the attitude towards self. The older generations are, and even like so people of my own generation and millennials and whatnot, we were taught a lot of give, ignore self. You give everything you have. To like moms, you got to give up your sacrifice for your children. Dad, you got to sacrifice for your family. All this sort of attitude we've had for years. I've dealt with a lot of that with like watching my clients when I was doing substance abuse treatment. They've just given and given and never even had a full cup to start with.
Right.
You can't give from an empty bucket. You can't. It's impossible. You have to do stuff to refill that self-love, to take care of yourself, so that you have the energy to then flow back out into your families, into your community. And so, like for me, sitting with a cup of coffee and a good friend, or doing some of my artwork with my fiber crafts, sometimes just sitting there and spinning yarn is so relaxing for me.
It's little things, like people are surprised how, like, the little things too, going back to that, after my my buddy's dad, the one that's the 10-year anniversary of, I remember it was like around 2015 too, kind of just discovering who I was, right? It was like, that real hard analytical, like, hey, who are you as a person? And I remember I was just like, I just wanted to go fishing one day. I just wanted to go camping one day. And then I actually did. I was like, I have been missing out on this therapeutic thing. Like, I don't even have to catch a fish. You know,
Nope.
just being out there,
With
just
a stick in the water.
a stick in the water. You know, maybe a couple beers, but but even then, it's like I'm just being away from it all. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's serenity, and I think. And of course, we talk about our generation and generational gaps. So, like, we have the whole give, and now we see the young generation that's kind of not so giving. But I think it's kind of one of those things where it's almost like overcorrection of generational trauma too. And I think, and that's kind of a thing too. It's understanding generational trauma, ancestral trauma too. And again, that's more the spiritual side of the house.
Yeah.
So that's kind of more other rabbit holes that we could probably go into as well. But. And again, like I'm kind of being a dead horse here, but you gotta give yourself a fighting chance, you know, as far as
absolutely.
like just everything and anything. But, and I guess I'm gonna probably end it with that Hofmo quote too. Is actually one of Hofmo, the words of Odin is better to give nothing at all than to give too much. So that's actually part of the Hofmo too. So even our gods will actually understand that. Sometimes we actually gotta like understand that giving too much is not beneficial.
Yep, not to anybody.
Not to anyone, not to yourself. But I think we probably ended on that note. So I appreciate you coming around and talking, and I appreciate the coffee too.
Absolutely.
So cheers.
Cheers.